Okay, let's get started and take a look at the colors that I have so far. This may not be the end all and be all, but this will give you a good perspective. So first of all, we have a black, cosmic brown, fresh copper, Inca gold, lemon sorbet, mother of pearl, platinum, spring green, cornflower blue, lilac lavender, peony pink, and aquamarine. Now, just for fun purposes, I went ahead and I swatched these out on paper for you so you could see how they look on white. So here we go. Here's the whole series of colors. And just so you know, the way I swatched them is I just used my finger and grabbed a little bit on top like this, and then just rubbed it right onto the paper. Now, for those of you who like to know, these have a light smell of house paint. So not nearly as strong as house paint, but it's that same kind of latexy, acrylic-y smell. Now, when you rub these right onto the paper, they sink in almost immediately and they dry very, very quickly, especially with this kind of light buffing application. And you can see as I tilt the paper that all of the colors have kind of this metallic mica shimmer to them. They really are very glittery without being glittery, if that makes sense. So once they're dry, you can rub your thumb on them and there will not be any smudging or smearing. And also none of that shimmer will actually rub off. So think of it like an acrylic paint that's in a paste form. So once it soaks in, once it's dry, it is there and it's not going anywhere. You can put water on top of it. They are not going to smudge out. They're not going to run away. They are boom, down there, not moving. And here they are. These are the same colors in the same order, but on black. Now, interestingly, with your black, your brown, which actually looks kind of coppery or bronzy, here's your copper, your golds. This is lemon. So lemon sorbet really does not turn up lemony on the black, and the mother of pearl and the platinum almost look identical. Your green actually looks a little yellowy. Your lilac lavender does not look anything like a lilac lavender, and the pink is kind of lost too. So if you want to use these on black paper, I highly recommend you stick to the black, brown, copper, gold, and then maybe pick just the silver, the platinum I mean, because the other ones are going to be kind of lost in this kind of application. But let me show you what happens when you push them through a stencil. Ooh, now all of a sudden this really is serious business. This is actually aquamarine and I think spring green that I pushed through a stencil. Now this has a really firm texture. I'm going to show you that in a minute. So it's not my favorite to scrape through a stencil because it is so firm, but it really does get the job done. And here's another example of how it looks with a chevron stencil. It really does hold up well. It has a really nice body and presence to it. And you get all of that shine without adding anything extra on top. So you get color plus mica sparkle kind of in one step. So just another little thing about the Nuvos, I want to point out that they come in a nice container. They stack really well. However, there's nothing on the lid that indicates the color inside at all. So if you store these in a drawer or flat, you may want to make a little swatch on the front. And if you want to know what color, it actually is, you have to look in these teeny weeny little letters above the SKU. So I will be punching out my samples, swatches, and then gluing them to the top so that I can see them in the drawer. Okay, so here's just, I want to show you what I mean. So this is actually, it has a very firm texture. If you push your finger in it, it holds the divot. It definitely is whipped like mousse, but you can see that when I scrape it up with the palette knife, it actually gets a little crumbly. It's so thick that it actually kind of crumbles up. So that's one of the reasons why when you want to go and push it through a stencil, sometimes it does not really want to go because this is such a kind of a thick mousse, a thick kind of embossing paste texture. Okay, so here I have a piece of embossed paper. This is just a heavy cardstock. And I'm just going to use my finger and lightly grab a little bit of the product and just buff on top. It really does a beautiful job of kind of bringing out a shimmer and a shine with very, very little work. So in some ways this is kind of like a rub and buff, but unlike a rub and buff, this is not a wax-based product. And a lot of those, you know, Inca Golds, those are all waxy based, which means they take some time to dry and they're a little smudgy. It also means that you can use them on surfaces like metal. This you cannot, because it is an acrylic latex based. You really do need to put it on a porous surface so that it can soak in and dry completely. But as I mentioned, the good news, the upshot of this means that once you go ahead and put these down, they dry fairly rapidly and then they stay put. They're not going to become water soluble. So what I'm going to do is go ahead, set this aside for a minute and let it dry and show you another sample I already have done. Okay, so this is one that I did during our Periscope trial. And as you can see, I blended quite a few colors. And one of the things I do like about it is that you can put down like the aqua color and the yellow, and you can kind of create a custom green on top. So while you're applying it and it's wet, you can blend them out, which is kind of nice. But I just want to show you, now that it's completely dry, I can add water and kind of scrumble it back and forth, but as you can see, they do not blend, they do not shift, they do not move, which is really great. If you do like to work in layers, you can put down an acrylic layer, have it grab, stay put, and then layer other acrylic and watercolor layers on top without having this budge or move. So let me show you another cool trick with these Nuvo Embellishment Mousse. Because they are acrylic, they kind of act a little bit like an acrylic paint. You can take a little bit and put it in a reservoir, a little palette. You can add some water to it and then go ahead and mix it up to create your own shimmery watercolor paints, which is kind of awesome. So now these are super pigmented, and as I mentioned before, you can layer over top like this. Now that other color is not going to go anywhere because it's already dried in, but you can add an acrylic wash. And I also like to point out that if you really wanted to, you could use a water brush, squirt a little bit of water through it, and you could go right into the pot like this, and then go ahead and apply to the paper. This also means that you can mix other custom colors by blending them together. I think it's pretty cool how quickly they melt down and dissolve into a thin body paint form. There really aren't many products that you can use as both a paint and a wash. So I find this pretty cool. And here is a little wash I created earlier. And again, this is going to act more like an acrylic paint now. I can go ahead and stamp on top, I can spray on top, and nothing is going to budge. You will want to use a hybrid ink though, so that, or a StazOn, so that it will not smudge afterwards. Okay, just a few more little random samples. I did try it on this Formica tag, and surprisingly, because the tag has some texture, it did stick down pretty well, and of course it'll work great on wood. This is a little wood button, and as you can see, you both get the shine and the color, which is kind of great. Things like this metal bottle cap though, it is really not suitable for it because again, you have to think of it like an acrylic, and it really does need something to soak into to help it glom on and also to dry. So just think of it like an acrylic paint that's all whipped up and moussey. So by the way, I want to show you, this is an acrylic or latex based product, and you can clean up pretty easily with a baby wipe. Now because these are so thick, I would highly recommend that before you put them away, I would just give them a quick spritz with water just to make sure that they don't dry out. There is a little bit of header space in between where the product is and the cap is, and that would maybe cause a little bit of evaporation, and it could cause your product to dry out. So I'm going to just put about 3 pumps of just plain water into my product before I cap them up, just to make sure that they stay nice and moist for the next time I go to use them.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up by showing you a few samples I made. On this one here on the top, I used some of the Nuvo crystal drops, but the background is actually a wash made with the Nuvo Embellishment Mousse. And as you can see, it actually has a very nice watercolor type of effect. So with this sample, I used that nice stenciled paper, and again, I was able to stamp on top of it, which I thought was pretty great. And on this sample I'm showing you now, this has that watercolor technique for the background, and then in the foreground on the black paper, I used the smudging it through a stencil. You'll also see in this next one, I just used what was left over on the stencil and a baby wipe to get that nice chevron technique. So I hope you enjoyed this review and demo. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel so that you don't miss a single crafty review. Thank you so much for watching, and have a crafty day.